House expected to pass a bipartisan bill today that would force the Justice Department to release all of its files on the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
Many more Republicans could be voting for the bill after a major reversal from President Trump this week. First, he told House Republicans to vote yes. He now says he'll sign the bill if it makes it to his desk. Yesterday, the ranking Democrat on the House Rules Committee slammed Republicans for, quote, stonewalling the release of the files, saying they waited till the president gave them permission to change their minds. But Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson came to the president's defense, saying they both shared concerns about the impact releasing the files could have on Epstein's victims.
We know what this is about. Trump gave you all permission. Last week, he was calling people into the Situation Room to try to kill the release of the files. But he knows he failed, and so now, finally, we get a last-minute attempt to try to save face. Guess what? I'll believe it when I see it.
He's never had anything to hide. He and I had the same concern, that we wanted to ensure that victims of these heinous crimes are completely protected from disclosure, those who don't want their names to be out there. And I'm not sure the discharge does that, and that's part of the problem.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us now with the latest. So, Julie, walk us through the timing of today's vote. How's it going to work?
Hey guys, good morning. Well, this is kind of interesting because of the sheer volume of House Republicans and Democrats that are expected to back this discharge petition, the vote that eventually comes on the floor today, it is being passed by what's known as this wonky rule in the House known as under suspension. It means that at least 2/3 of the House are ready to put up the votes to pass this piece of legislation, so it doesn't need to jump through any of the procedural hoops and rules that we normally see. That's significant because it means that a majority of the House is going to support it, even though just 218 signed that discharge petition that forced Speaker Johnson to put this on the floor, triggering this vote to force the DOJ to release these Epstein files if and when it also makes its way through the Senate. So we're going to see this happen sometime this afternoon around 3 p.m., a really significant vote, an overwhelming vote expected as well.
Julie, so while the president's expressing support now for this bill, he's also saying that even if everything is released, his critics will never be satisfied. He compared it to the release of the files related to the assassinations of JFK and Martin Luther King Jr. How are lawmakers on both sides of the aisle responding to President Trump shifting his position on this, and what do you make about what he mentioned there?
Yeah, I asked so many House Republicans and Democrats about his shifting stances last night when the House was voting. Democrats are saying that this is because the president saw the writing on the wall. He knew that this is the way the vote was going to unfold. There's nothing he could have done to stop this vote from taking place, although he did hold some meetings in the hours before this discharge petition was finalized last week, trying to convince some of the Republican women who signed on not to support it. When that didn't work, we saw the president a couple of days later come out and say, you know what, just release the files. The House should vote on it. But when I talked to some Republicans who just days ago were saying that this Epstein saga is a hoax, of course, repeating some of the very comments we heard from the president, saying they would never vote for this. One of them, including Congressman Troy Nehls, that I talked to last night, said he's now voting for it. I asked him why. Take a listen.
Well, why are you voting for it then, sir?
Everybody's voting for it.
So you're voting for it because everyone's voting for it?
Everybody's going to vote for it.
Why not vote against it if you think it's a hoax?
Everybody's going to vote for it.
But why not do this months ago?
Why not do it 4 years ago? Under Joe Biden, you people didn't talk about it.
Sir,
you guys are sick.
But, sir,
you need counseling.
So you heard his impassioned reaction there. He was defending the president. I'll tell you, when it comes to the Senate, we do expect an overwhelming vote there if and when it makes it to the floor. Leader Schumer, the top Democrat, calling for that to happen.
Julie doing a good job of pressing the congressman there. All right, so we are still seeing the fallout from a batch of thousands of emails the House Oversight Committee released last week. Some of them involve former Treasury, the president of Harvard University, Larry Summers, who did keep in touch with Epstein. Tell us more about how the release of these emails has impacted him and whether we're hearing any response.
Yeah, this is one of those names that nobody really knew had this close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. This came out of the tranche of emails that the House Oversight Committee was able to obtain from the Epstein estate. That's different than the files that we expect to come out from the Department of Justice. Larry Summers apologizing for his relationship with Epstein. I should note he's not accused of any wrongdoing, but what we saw in the correspondence between the two men is that they spoke for a number of years, even after Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of sex abuse. And so that's significant. Larry Summers saying he's stepping aside from his role at Harvard University, but that's only coming after he had a lot of public pressure, including from some senators, to do so.
All right, Julie Sirkin, thank you so much.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba. Monica, good morning. So, I mean, the big question, we've been asking this since yesterday, right, is just why the president changed his mind. Do we have any further insight on that? And also, if you set aside the congressional vote, is there anything stopping the president from instructing the Justice Department to release these documents?
And that is such a key question here. And the answer to that is if the president did decide that he wanted to order this release, he could. But there are some questions about whether the Department of Justice could do so in a quick fashion, because there's information here that might need to be redacted. Information that's sensitive. There's information that was related to grand jury testimony, which we know was tied up and held up in the courts. But as you mentioned in your previous conversation, as with Martin Luther King Jr. and JFK and those assassinations, there is a process here by which the president could set this in motion. Instead, I think politically, guys, and this is the key takeaway, the president saw where this was going and decided that he couldn't continue to be an obstacle to it, that he needed to kind of get on board with where Republicans were headed here in this bipartisan effort for more information. So they are deciding to go that route because then the president can say, look, I supported this, I backed it, and now let's please put this behind us. That's essentially what he said yesterday. But he also admitted that even if they do this, it might not be enough to satisfy his own MAGA base that has been clamoring for more information. So this is really a political challenge, even though we know there are also these legal steps that they need to go through and these congressional steps that we're going to start to see today.
Monica, let's talk about the president's day ahead. Another big story. He's set to welcome Saudi Arabia's crown prince, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, to the White House today. This is going to be his first trip to the U.S. since the 2018 murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi at a Saudi consulate in Istanbul. We know a U.S. intelligence report from 2021 found that the Saudi crown prince approved the operation to capture or kill Khashoggi. For the Trump administration, is all of that forgotten? What can we expect today at the White House?
Well, today you're really going to see what amounts to a working visit, and it's almost everything but a state dinner. There will be an Oval Office component, there will be a bilateral lunch, and then later in the evening there will be a black tie dinner for the Crown Prince. And certainly today you can expect, according to the White House, some defense and economic agreements. And also the president said that the U.S. is going to be selling Saudi Arabia F-35 fighter jets. So we'll expect more details on that, in addition to discussions on everything from AI to other potential areas of agreement and other things that they can work on. And remember that President Trump really wants Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords. It's unclear whether that is something that is going to happen. There are questions on both sides and in the region about whether that will actually materialize. But the president says that's one of his main goals for today's visit. So to really answer your question here, guys, this is the Crown Prince re-entering the diplomatic fold in a significant way, given everything you laid out about the last few years.
Monica, a lot of news to cover. I also want to ask you about the fact that a federal judge is warning prosecutors that their case against former FBI Director James Comey could be in jeopardy. This is from a court ruling. The judge says the government's handling of the case is raising, quote, genuine issues of misconduct. Walk us through this ruling and where the case goes from here.
Yeah, this is all about the appointment of Lindsay Halligan, who is the prosecutor here, and whether she made some serious errors, according to the judge. Errors so serious that essentially the case could be thrown out because of some of the things she said when she was instructing to the grand jury and when she was talking about these grand jury proceedings. So we know that this judge really issued a pretty scathing assessment of what she did here. Remember, this is somebody who didn't have any kind of criminal experience in prosecuting any kind of case like this before the president asked her to take this on. So next, we know that another judge will assess this in the coming weeks to see where that can proceed. And it's possible, again, this could all go away because of some of those mistakes, potentially.
Monica Alba, thanks as always.
In other news out of Washington, the acting administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, better known as FEMA, has stepped down. He was only on the job for 6 months. Two officials from the Trump administration confirmed to NBC News that David Richardson resigned from his role on Monday. Richardson quickly came under scrutiny this year for his slow response to the deadly July floods in Texas. More than 130 people were killed there. He could not be reached for 24 hours during the height of the disaster. Later, in a contentious hearing on Capitol Hill, he revealed he was on vacation as the floods hit. Richardson had no prior experience in emergency management before taking the job. He said now that hurricane season is nearly over, he can leave for other opportunities. FEMA's current chief of staff, Karen Evans, will become the next acting administrator starting on December 1st.
Well, President Trump's immigration crackdown in North Carolina is continuing. Federal agents arrived in Charlotte over the weekend, where some arrests turned violent as protesters push back on what's been dubbed Operation Charlotte's Web. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler has the latest details.
Federal agents ramping up their immigration crackdown in Charlotte. The Department of Homeland Security says Border Patrol has arrested more than 130 people since Saturday. They are criminals with a history of assault, DUIs, and gang affiliation. DHS not specifying how many of those detained have criminal histories.
Too many times we're finding that some very, very disreputable individuals are seeking work in people's homes.
Across the city, encounters turning angry and chaotic. Officers breaking this man's car window. Confrontations turning violent at times. HS says one officer was injured when a man drove a van into a law enforcement SUV. 24-year-old citizen Miguel Martinez now charged with felony assault. One witness telling NBC News more than 20 Border Patrol agents showed up at a community center for refugee and immigrant children. No children were present.
This is not making us safer. It's stoking fear and dividing our community.
It's scary. Some residents say their citizenship isn't enough to feel safe. Jonathan Ocampo's parents immigrated here from Colombia. He showed us the passport he now carries everywhere.
It's sad that, I'm not going on an international trip or anything, but I have to carry this.
Hispanic-owned businesses closing their doors to avoid becoming targets. Manolo's Bakery shuttered for a third straight day. Owner Manolo Betancourt stands guard outside, sounding his whistle when he thinks he spots Border Patrol. How long do you plan to keep your bakery closed?
As long as it takes.
Our thanks to Ryan Chandler for that report.
A homeowner in Indiana is now facing voluntary manslaughter charges. Prosecutors allege he shot and killed a housekeeper who mistakenly showed up at the wrong door. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin has the details.
Outside Indianapolis, a homeowner behind bars charged with voluntary manslaughter.
The person did not have a reasonable belief that that type of force was necessary.
Prosecutors say Kurt Anderson shot and killed housekeeper Maria Florinda Rios Perez after she and her husband mistakenly tried to enter his home at around 7 a.m. on November 5th. Video shows the bullet hole through the front door from the fatal shot that struck Perez in the head. Her husband Mauricio desperate to save her.
No es fácil.
Seeing my wife in my arms, already lifeless, covered in blood, I felt like they tore everything from me, he says. The couple had been booked to clean another house in the same neighborhood. According to court documents, Anderson told investigators he and his wife woke up to the sound of what appeared to be some type of keys, tools, or instrument being used on the front door of the residence. He said he could hear and see that the individuals outside were still trying to get into his home, adding it was getting more and more aggressive. According to court documents, the couple never made it, and that there were no handprints or any evidence of forceful contact with the structure of the door itself. In a statement, Anderson's lawyer pointing to the Castle Doctrine, which he wrote allows a person to use reasonable force, including deadly force, if he reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent an unlawful entry into his home.
That our decision today in no way should be interpreted as a challenge to Indiana stand your ground law.
Anderson has yet to enter a plea. Erin McLaughlin, NBC News.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savallo. So as Erin just mentioned there, the homeowner's attorney is citing the Castle Doctrine as a defense. Tell us more about that and how it's different from stand your ground.
Yeah, and Indiana has a very robust both self-defense and Castle Doctrine. And the difference is self-defense is about using reasonable force to defend yourself or another person. Castle Doctrine is about using reasonable force, including deadly force, to protect your home, which in a way is a departure from the rule that you can't use deadly force just to protect your property. But the home is a special kind of property. Another important point is that once the defendant raises self-defense or Castle Doctrine, the state must disprove it. It has the burden to disprove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So Indiana has a very robust self-defense set of statutes.
So if this sounds like either way it comes down to reasonable force. How is that determined legally?
Well, you saw some of the facts that are involved here. Are there fingerprints? I mean, to me, I imagined, are they these two standing outside with a mop, a bucket, and cleaning supplies? Were there any communications? You noticed the complaint mentioned something about fingerprints. Those are all factors that will go into the reasonableness determination. But again, it is the state that has the burden to disprove the reasonableness of this use of force, which is another tick in the favor of defendant.
Right.
We heard a soundbite from the prosecutor there saying this is not a challenge to Indiana's stand your ground laws. He had also said he's not challenging a person's right to self-defense. Why do you think he went out of his way to say that?
That is the statement of an elected official more than a prosecutor, because really, who is saying that this is challenging a law that's been around for literally decades? Some of the seminal cases on stand your ground and, on castle doctrine in Indiana are several decades old, dating back to the 90s. So this is not an assault on the law itself. It is a determination by the prosecutor that the defendant's activity did not fall within that self-defense or castle doctrine statute.
So what happens next year?
What happens next is that the defense is going to argue this castle doctrine. They're going to raise it, likely at trial, and place the burden on the state. And I have to say, in a country where self-defense laws vary wildly from state to state, Indiana is one that has a very strong self-defense and castle doctrine. So that is something that really puts the odds almost in the defense's favor here.
Sounds like you're saying prosecutors have to provide a lot of evidence here if they want to try and win this case.
They sure do. They have a lot of evidence, but that factored into their determination to actually bring this case, notwithstanding Indiana's castle doctrine.
All right. Danny Ceballos, thank you so much.
On the West Coast, a continuous chain of powerful rainstorms have caused dangerous situations across Southern California. The storms triggered mudslides and flooding, which turned deadly. And there's even more rain on the way. Here's NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky.
Days of dangerous, drenching rain proving West Coast storms aren't over yet. The atmospheric river behind dozens of accidents on slick roads now blamed for at least 7 deaths. The most recent near Monterey, where authorities say sudden waves swept a 7-year-old girl into the sea. Her father killed trying to save her. Divers recovering her body late Sunday.
I came to find her and to bring closer to the family.
Some of the heaviest rain hitting mountain towns, where debris runoff buried entire streets and a muddy mess.
You gotta be prepared.
The moisture-laden storm system hitting Las Vegas, flooding parts of the Link Hotel's parking garage. At higher elevations, that same rain turning to serious snow. The National Weather Service issuing a winter storm warning for the eastern Sierra. Back in Los Angeles, the steady rain leading to several close calls.
We just heard an unnatural noise, like just a big bang.
In neighborhoods still bearing the scars of wildfires, lingering concerns.
When you have a hillside that burns, you don't have the foliage and the leaves to slow down the drop's intensity when it hits the earth. So what happens? Debris flows, mudslides.
Morgan Chesky, NBC News.
Let's check in with meteorologist Angie Lassman, who's got the latest on what's ahead for the West Coast, plus some other strong storms on the move this morning.
Yeah, a couple of trouble spots this morning, guys. Hi there. We continue to watch some of this rain kind of filtering into parts of the Southwest. This is leaving us with some unsettled weather here across Arizona, parts of Southern California, Nevada as well. And we're going to continue to see kind of this same region remain under flood watch here as we get through the day today. And you can see, of course, we've had ample amounts of rain over the past couple of days and more of that on the way here as this area of low pressure kind of slides a little further inland. This brings the heavy rain to Nevada, Arizona, and Utah today, and we'll see some of that snow across parts of the Great Basin. And then tomorrow, we gear up for this next storm system at our doorstep. It's going to eventually slide closer to the coast here as we get through your Wednesday. Your flood risk will remain for parts of Arizona and New Mexico because of that first system. But then this next one is going to bring another batch of some heavy rain to the folks across the West Coast. So between now and the middle of the work week, specifically likely watching the southwest for anywhere over 1 inch to 2 inches and even isolated amounts upwards of 3 inches in some locations. So we'll watch for the flooding concern. And then we'll pick up some snow as well. Nothing too impressive, but in the Sierra Range across the Great Basin, maybe a 1/2 inch or a 1/2 foot or higher in some of those locations. And then I mentioned there's a couple other trouble spots, and that's across the Great Lakes as we kind of track this system working rain and even some snow for folks there. We'll have the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic get in on the rain mostly, and then some of those snow showers for the Great Lakes here through the day today. This will bring us kind of a good dose of rain across some spots, 1 inch or so you can see again across the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic. And then otherwise, temperatures are quite warm. You can see we've got some areas that could see some record warmth over the next day or so. We look to tomorrow, it's 80s across the board. These temperatures, of course, not typical for this time of year, but that milder air will settle in across most of the east, too. You can see we go from the 50s, high 50s, I should say, on Thursday in Chicago to the low 50s on Friday, and then upper 40s by the time the weekend rolls around. Hanging on to those 70s, though, for Charlotte, mid-70s it is, all the way through the work week and into the weekend. And then it's the 50s in Richmond on Thursday, but check out Friday. We are nearly at 70 degrees, so we truly, truly cannot make up our mind about where our temperatures want to land right now, guys, but we've got the 50s on tap in New York City.
New York made up its mind.
Yeah. We're like, 50, 55.
It's stay.
Split the difference.
Right.
Exactly.
Thanks, Angie.
Thank you.
Coming up on Morning News Now, Latin America on edge.
Yeah, this is as the U.S. displays its military might in the Caribbean. President Trump signals his openness to escalating his war on drugs with ally Mexico, now potentially a target. We'll have analysis on that and plenty more up next.
Will U.S. troops ever be sent into Gaza? Do you think President Putin will ever be serious about peace? Polls are showing frustration with both parties over this shutdown. Who's going to blink first here? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
The NBC News mobile app. Get connected to your favorite news shows. For the top stories, breaking news, and live video, download the NBC News mobile app now.
Welcome back. As the U.S. continues to build up its military presence in the Caribbean and carry out deadly strikes on alleged drug boats, President Trump now says he is open to striking Mexico and Colombia as part of his war on drug cartels. The move is escalating tensions in Latin America, which is already on edge following the president's threats to strike Venezuela. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake has the latest.
With America's largest aircraft carrier now in the Caribbean, and after another deadly U.S. strike against an alleged drug boat, President Trump signaling he's willing to expand his war on drug cartels into Mexico.
Would I launch strikes in Mexico to stop drugs? It's okay with me. Whatever we have to do to stop drugs. We know their address. We know their front door. We know everything about every one of them.
And Colombia, too, where over 90% of cocaine smuggled into the U.S. is produced.
Colombia has cocaine factories where they make cocaine. Would I knock out those factories? I would be proud to do it personally. I didn't say I'm doing it, but I would be proud to do it because we're going to save millions of lives by doing it.
The president has already been weighing options to strike targets in Venezuela.
Is there anything you're ready to rule out at this point? Are you ruling out U.S. troops on the ground?
No, I don't rule out that. I don't rule out anything. We just have to take care of Venezuela.
But also holding out the possibility he'd speak with Venezuela's authoritarian leader, Nicolas Maduro, whom the administration accuses of running one of the country's cartels, which Maduro denies.
Are you prepared to speak with him directly? Would you commit to doing that before you order the strikes?
Yeah, I probably would talk to him. Yeah, I'd talk to everybody.
While critics say those boat strikes have already gone too far.
These strikes are illegal, and it's creating major problems for the U.S.
The White House insists the strikes so far have been legal, and the president said today he would, quote, probably go to Congress if he were to expand them.
All right, Garrett, thank you. Well, let's continue this conversation with Jason Marzak. He's the Vice President and Senior Director of the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arsh Latin America Center. Jason, good morning. Thanks very much for joining us. So, Mexican President Sheinbaum has repeatedly said that U.S. military action in Mexico would not be allowed without her permission. Do you think strikes on Mexico are a serious proposition, given it's a close U.S. ally, our neighbor? What do you make of the president's comments?
Well, good morning, Savannah and Joe. Look, I think the Mexican president has been pretty adamant in the past in saying that that Mexico is willing to cooperate with the U.S. on a whole range of items to be able to stop drug trafficking coming from Mexico into the United States. And we've seen a number of different measures that the Mexicans have taken to really be able to seal the border much more effectively than previously. And this goes to President Trump's desire to really stop drug traffic coming from Mexico into the United States. So will the United States strike inside Mexican territory? I highly doubt. I think this is part of the president's desire to levy more pressure on the Mexicans to take additional action beyond what's already been taken.
Jason, we also heard the president say he's open to speaking directly with Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro. In an interview yesterday, Maduro said he's also willing to talk to Mr. Trump, adding he's opposed to war. Given the military buildup from the U.S. on Venezuela's front door, do you think talks are realistic at this stage?
Well, Joe, there have been talks previously, and there have been talks with Nicolas Maduro for years, frankly, and those talks have always led to Maduro essentially negating what was actually agreed to at the negotiation table. So if there are talks between Trump and Maduro, it'll be important that the president finds mechanisms to be able to ensure that Maduro finally does live up to his promises, because he's pledged a lot of different items over the years, and he's always used talks to essentially delay any type of action. So that would be an important component of any conversations between the Trump White House and Maduro. Those talks might be ongoing. Those talks were ongoing earlier in the year. Those talks had supposedly ended. But if talks are continuing, that's probably a good thing, because it means that that the president's trying to find a peaceful way to be able to hopefully put additional pressure on Nicolas Maduro and also reduce the drug trafficking coming from Venezuela.
Jason, on Sunday, the State Department designated Venezuela's Cartel de los Soles a terrorist organization effective November 24th. But we just heard Garrett mention this. I mean, the administration claims that President Maduro heads the cartel. He strongly denies any ties to that or the drug trade generally. But what is the significance of that move? What does it mean for the legality of these ongoing U.S. strikes on these alleged drug boats?
Well, that's an important move, Savannah, because the designation of the Cartel de los Soles effectively means that Nicolas Maduro is a terrorist, because the president said that it's now a foreign terrorist organization. The president said that Nicolas Maduro heads that organization. The designation also provides a whole range of additional options for the United States to be able to target Cartel de los Soles. And Secretary Rubio said previously it also gives the additional rights to be able to target those groups. And so it really ramps with the pressure on Venezuela, on Nicolas Maduro, and it's probably part of the tactics that are being deployed insofar as any talks that might be ongoing.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.